What does it take to be a successful entrepreneur? A dangerous amount of coffee and a ton of grit. My name is Tracey, and every week I interview business leaders to share their stories, life lessons, failures, and advice with you. Welcome to Coffee and Grit. Get that roar going, everybody. Get that roar going. What is up? Welcome back to another episode of Coffee and Grit. We're laughing in the studio. Man, Grant telling me to tell him what makes an entrepreneur. What makes
No, I don't know. Do people actually know that we play that live before
you
we
know
go
what?
in?
Yeah. So
Explain
so
that a
cat's
sec.
out of the bag. You know what? Here's a nice tip in life, and if for all the music lovers out there, you probably know what I'm talking about. But sometimes you need that thing to like get you going. You know, in the studio here built me, and you hear it if you listen to the intro of just kick-ass intro song, and it's not the same to start an episode for me without hearing that song or without hearing that roar. And also what's really cool is when we have a guest in the studio and it's like that roar goes off and seeing their face, and like I know it's gonna be a killer episode when they get that energy and feeling with it. So yeah, so we play that intro every single time, and then I go into it, which is probably why I flawlessly do the what's up every time. I don't know.
Yeah, man. You stick the landing
Stick it.
really, really well. So, but no, it's fun. Everyone gets fired up. I enjoy listening to it. Like, you know, it's 2:00. It's usually the afternoon. I'm like, all right, let's go get it.
Let's go get it. And I'm still drinking coffee today because, man, I'm drinking my own coffee. And that is so freaking cool to say.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
So, Lion's Breath is officially launched. It's, Grant came up with the name Lion's Breath. This is back in October in an episode. And we went down that path, and this week it became a real thing. And so kind of pull up in the camera here. We have our coffee, and right now this is the best smelling coffee I've ever smelled in my life. And so it's been awesome. I've had all these pounds of coffee in my house ready to go. And man, it's exciting. I've always been a sports guy. I've always wore, other teams' hoodies, and we'll talk about the Lions here in a minute because for those of you who don't know, this is the day after the Lions' first playoff game in 30 years.
Ow, ow.
Whew. I've always, I guess, take it back. I've always, throughout my whole life, have had a fascination with very charismatic people. It was something that I didn't see myself as. It was something that I always had this like wish and a hope that I could be like certain people. When I looked at I say it all the time, difference makers. I looked at I was obsessed with MLK speeches, John Lennon, Bill Clinton back in the day. These people that just, Obama and the way he talked and spoke, and just these great orators, just really charismatic people. And I guess it was where we'll kick off, like when I was in my teens and early 20s, I never saw myself here. I never saw myself sitting here in my own hoodie, kicking the Roar logo.
Is that available at your website, Jason?
It is available for purchase on my website. I never saw myself having my own coffee, going into it. I put myself in a fantasy world, and I got in and I played a lot of video games. I was obsessed with Madden, franchise modes of any sports thing. But like I went through life and I went through the motions. I worked in a nursing home. I did the same job every single day. Yeah, there's different stuff because you're dealing with people, but every single day it was about the same exact thing, and I had the same exact conversation all the time. And in most of my day, I was wrapped up in my head thinking about my dynasty mode in Madden, and what trades I was going to make, and what draft picks I was going to do, and and every year, I won every season. I won the Super Bowl because I could probably complete a season, every once a week or something, just playing. But I hid, behind all these other charismatic people, wishing and hoping. I spent all my time in a fantasy world, never thinking that I could do it myself. And then one day I realized, holy shit, I can do this myself, right? Like, what makes these other people that I think are awesome or special, like they might not even think that they're awesome or special. And so there's a big journey in that. But what I'm telling you and why I'm so passionate about what I'm doing is you're all difference makers. What separates somebody that's at the top that you really admire or that you look up to or that you think that I could never do that? You're wrong. you can do that, and maybe you do it even better because you have your own special gift. And so, a couple months ago is we had Dylan in England in the show, and he was talking about his coffee, and it's like, that's a really good idea. Wow, we're coffee and grit, and we don't have a coffee. That's a phenomenal idea, man. And then Grant's like lion's breath. And honestly, if Grant wouldn't have said lion's breath, I probably wouldn't have went through with it. It just would have been like a joke, and we would have passed on. But as soon as Grant came up with that just kick-ass legitimate name, I mean, that sold it in itself. Just going out on Facebook and talking about lion's breath, all of a sudden I had a community of people that were there and buying it. And to kind of circle back with this ramble is I was working out with one of my friends a couple weeks ago and talking about lion's breath and talking about things coming up and talking about how all of a sudden all this merchandise, the hoodies are selling, people are lining up and buying coffee. Not one single person asked me, how much is that coffee, before they bought it. They all just said, give me some, I want a bag, give me a couple bags. And so that's kind of a wow, that's kind of a wow moment. So when I was talking to my friend, Rob Pierce, he was like, everybody is so excited because it's you. And he told me, and this is, I don't receive compliments very well, but he was like, you're a true influencer. And I think it's just, doing good things for people. I don't know, like maybe the energy I bring, I guess really caring. I don't know what all it is, but I will take that compliment because something's happening. Something's happening when I can throw a couple posts about coffee and move 40 pounds of coffee just like that. That's really cool. And again, I'm saying this because just outside the studio here, I was asked, what did it take to bring this together? And it wasn't hard work. What's really, really cool is when you're meant to do something, when you know what your purpose is, or when you're chasing that thing, relentlessly, the world kind of opens up and gives it to you. You get this idea from somebody else that is doing it. And then somebody like Grant, that's super creative, says a name, and then you remember that you have a relationship with a coffee roaster because my favorite coffee I've ever tasted was at this particular coffee roaster out in Goodrich, Michigan. I was a sales director for Verizon Wireless Zone, and I had a location out in Ortonville. And my manager of that location, Kelly Quisenberry, shout out to Kelly, was like, "You got to try this coffee. This is the best coffee ever." And she'd been a patron of that coffee shop for quite some time. And so I went and tried the coffee, blown away. Just the best coffee I'd ever had in my life, and best smell. But not only that, but and I've talked about this in other episodes, the culture of the business, like the people that work there, the service, the experience. It's a family owned business. I didn't know all their story, but I would take all my interviews there. I would stock up on coffee whenever I was out. I gifted, stock up around Christmas time and give people bags of coffee because it's phenomenal. And so when Grant said lion's breath, I'm like, the first thing I thought of was macadamia nut coffee. That was my favorite coffee ever. Because like when you think of lion's breath, I think of something majestic, like and again, how does this all tie together? Well, man, I believe in uncaging beasts. And what better way to uncage a beast than with a majestic cup of coffee, right? Kicking off your day and deserving excellence. But so past relationships, I remembered this relationship I had with the coffee shop. And so I just kind of went out there and had a conversation. And then next thing you know, it just really unfolded really, really quickly. And there's some other infrastructure stuff too, because it's not just about buying, getting coffee. I'm really fortunate to have a really talented wife that has her own business, and it really aligns with what I'm doing with working with my clients and even just branding myself. I again, for business owners out there, I love sports. I very rarely wear one of my team jerseys anymore because I'm constantly wearing my own brand. And I get told as I'm out in public, I get told this constantly, that you do a phenomenal job of branding yourself. Nobody's guessing where you're coming from. But again, this is my apparel. It's my team. Right. And so I'm out there in supporting it. Before we get back at it, a quick shout out for our sponsor, Playbook Builder, powered by AI. This show has always been about giving the resources and the tools to small business owners in order to grow and scale your businesses successfully. And so I'm so excited to partner with a company that does just that. If you've listened and heard any of our guests, you've heard talking about building process, developing and training, building culture, are all such important pieces in order to building a great company. Well, Playbook Builder, powered by AI, has come along and revolutionized the game on how you can do that for your team and people. Whether you're onboarding new people, training and developing, continued training and developing, you're looking to scale your business or eventually sell, or most importantly, you're looking to build a legacy as a visionary. Playbook Builder, powered by AI, is able to solve those problems for you. For me as a consultant, I've been able to plug in, and it's so amazing for what I do for clients. I can now leave a legacy. And so, for example, I'm next week training a new hire for a company, and I've been able to build out the next month of her training program using Playbook Builder, powered by AI. The cool thing about the AI, what does that do? What's the hardest part of building out a process? Taking this step by step and making it easy to learn. What the AI piece does is you can actually type in what process it is, whether you want to onboard, if you want to onboard a new employee, type in onboard a new employee and what type of industry you're in, and the AI will put together a foundation for you to build out your playbook. It is absolutely incredible. But don't take my word for it. Head on over to playbookbuilder.com, and these guys have set it up to where you can take this for a test run with no obligations. Plug in what kind of playbook you want to build. If it's a sales training playbook, for example, plug that in the description. And in the description, you can also put in what kind of industry you're in, and then hit generate, and it will generate a playbook for you. Impress from there, and you can take a 30-day free trial of the playbook system altogether.
So yeah, I just want to say about the naming thing. First of all, thank you. That's very, very kind. I'm pretty sure you would have had your own coffee at some point anyway, but I do appreciate you saying that. But I also want to say part of what made me feel comfortable enough doing that was that I knew you were open to hearing ideas. You know, even though it's your show, it's something where you've never been one of those people who doesn't want to hear what other people have to say, and you were receiving of it. So I appreciate that. This is definitely a cool thing to be a part of because it's never something I've done before. And yeah, man, just want to say it's great working with you, and that's kind of why we're able to do some of the things we're able to do. It's like, hey, why don't we do that? I don't know. Let's do it.
Let's do it.
And then here we are, like 3 months later.
In what is it, and the possibility of things is what's possible, and again, kind of going on that coffee. I'm coaching, I'm consulting, I do the podcast, and it's like, you know, is it really off track to bring a product in? But this has been actually a really awesome piece to add to the business. I think it fits the podcast really, really well. And as I was meeting with one of my my Kevin Sabaski, who's an accountability partner for me, and we meet up once a week and really dive deep into our business and our issues and help each other out, talking about how everything again connects, and it's all about uncaging beasts. In I think even going into what Grant's saying of like being open and receptive and hearing is that every one of us have special talents and abilities, and being able to just listen, be open, and being open to receiving stuff. Like I don't know everything, you know, and so and I guess that's even why I get so much out of the podcast myself. And so for all of you listening, if you haven't listened, go back and listen to these episodes, because we've had so many incredible guests. That data is stories with soul. Stories are data with soul. Said that backwards. Stories are data with soul. When you're listening to what people are saying, like, there's so many triumphs, man. The Darren Bassett episode is the most recent one in the launch, and just the stuff he's talking about placing your order with the universe and then going out and doing it. You know, talking about, and I've said this so many times, like sitting on your hands and waiting for it to happen. And, you know, he's like, no one is going to do it for you. And I can't agree more. But as you're listening to this stuff, oh man, going back to the ETA guys, I've had so much feedback of people that were starting businesses. I have a friend, Brian Babbis, BJ, shout out to BJ, starting out his company, Integrated Systems, and he's doing like high-end audio equipment installations inside homes and stuff. But so he's starting out his business, and he sees these ATA guys, Aaron and Alan, talking about starting their business and just going out on a limb and doing the thing that everybody's like telling you, you're crazy to give up a pension, you're crazy to give up a good high-paying job to go start that thing, and to see them, 5-6 years down the road where they're building really something awesome has given BJ just another level of inspiration, so what you can get out of this is incredible as you're listening to some of the things we're saying. So not to get too far off topic, because man, I'm so excited. I know I can see Johnny from the window here too. Grant, man, the Lions have won their first playoff game in 30 years.
You going to tell him what we were talking about with Don as far as did you hear the playoff game that we were talking about?
No.
Yeah, because so spoiler alert, a bunch of us know each other, big community. Yep. So Don and Angela Pichello, welcome to Livingston. You should check out their show. They were in here recording it right before Jason walked in and talking about how the last, Don was at the last playoff game. I believe Johnny was too.
Oh, 1991.
Yeah, in 91 or 94. I forget what it was. But yeah, they were at the last one. And then, last night, not as of here hearing this episode, but we just taped the episode the day after they won it. Awesome stuff.
It's so awesome. It was so awesome seeing the guy in the stands that's had the season tickets for 66 years. And just like, seeing the look on his face as
Can we
they're winning that game.
Passes for that guy? Like, I believe Johnny said that. Like, let's just hook that guy up, can we?
I know, right? I'm gonna do my plug here. Me and Jackson have been, my son Jackson have been talking about quite a bit that it would be the ultimate to have Dan Campbell on Coffee and Grit. So if anybody listening knows Dan Campbell, hook it up. Talk about grit right there. Obviously, what a guy to have on the show.
Can we just like find a way to drop like parachute into the Lions facility like a bag of the new coffee with a time and address on it, and just hope that that's enough to get him here? Do you think that would work?
You know what? I'm putting it out there in the universe. I'm putting it out there where it's official. Anytime I've ever made declarations in my life and said this is going to happen, it's happened.
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Let's go.
Right.
Man,
and
I'm
so
excited.
like we look at and talk about declarations, we looked at Dan Campbell as a crazy man when he came in and he gave that speech about biting kneecaps and taking out chunks. And, there's a Jared Goff hype video out before the playoffs and, him coming in and being like, we're not going to get a gut punch anymore. We're not going to lose anymore. We're going to turn this around. And like, being a Lions fan, remembering very vividly in 1991 when the last time we won the playoff game, being through the 0-16 season, drinking Kool-Aid every single year, it's like, yeah, right.
Yeah.
But there's always been something different about Dan Campbell. In just, I don't know, and maybe it's just because I watched this team and so much, but how many other locker room celebrations do you hear "I love you" constantly? You know what I mean? And like that, it seems like more than just a football team. Those guys really have they built an incredible culture of everybody just really next man up and believing in your brothers. And I heard, a couple weeks ago, Ben Johnson was talking about, and if you're not a Lions fan, I really apologize for this episode.
I don't.
I don't either.
I don't. There's no apology from the editor. Apologies.
So, but you look at two great running backs like Montgomery and Gibbs, and they're talking about like, fans get frustrated with how we use them sometimes. You got to understand that these players oftentimes dictate how we play them. Like Montgomery, if he sees Gibbs is hot, is like, keep him out there, or vice versa. And so we're talking about professional sports where all these guys have huge egos, and you have to believe that you're the best at what you do in order to make it to that level. And you got everybody playing for each other. It's how to build things the right way. Whether you're building a sports team or you're building a company, so the entrepreneurs out there look at these things he's doing. And I think a big thing is just communication. I feel like everybody there knows exactly where they stand. Mm-hmm. And you can tell it by the guys that get cut. that are well-wishing. Isaiah Buggs, who's like a big part of the organization, gets cut and is like, I'm always going to be a Lions fan. Like I'm rooting for these guys to the end. Like to be a part of that, and again, taking it back to a company, I used to stress so hard about firing people. Like I would lose sleep at night. I would put it off throughout the whole entire day and make it the last thing. And oh my God, never have never have the worst thing you have to do be the last thing you do for the day. Make it the absolute first thing, whether you have to give a speech or fire somebody or deliver any kind of bad news. Make it that first thing, because if not, you're going to lose so much. You're going to have so much anxiety and lose so much sleep and energy just by, and not get the things that you really need to get done by thinking about this thing. And so, but I got really good at it because one, in a good culture, in a good company, you're constantly communicating with your people. And we've had several guests that have built amazing companies on here. Sam Gimbel being one I think of, the ATA guys being another one just recently, that have come on and talked about building amazing companies. It all comes down into that communication and talking to your people. Again, good, bad, and indifferent. And so it's so easy when you have somebody that you're leading or that you're responsible for, and you hear them do something that needs to be corrected. And it's so easy for so many things to get in the way, or to put that off. Never put those conversations off, because they will go to the wayside and you won't have them. And then there's no way to correct. There's no way to fix. And then one day, after it happens over and over again, you're going to just rip that poor person's head off, and they're going to never know what they did wrong or how to fix it. And so always go up and always make sure you set time to have conversations with people when it's there and it's fresh. Mm-hmm. But again, so as I'm doing that, I'm having conversations with people, they have then an opportunity and a chance to correct and get better. In an effective leadership conversation, you're having follow-up. You don't just have a conversation and then, you never talk about it again. You want to make sure and measure progress, right? Or you want to make sure that they're doing it, and you're having that communication all along. And if they're still not doing the things that we talked about, there's no excuses then at that point. My mentor told me, you don't fire people, people fire themselves. And so when I'd go and have conversations to terminate people, it was never really a surprise. Hey, we're here, we're having this conversation again. We talked about last time, if we had to have this conversation again, it's time to go, and it's that time. It was my termination. I remember mentoring leaders, and I would come out and I'd help them for the first few times terminate people that they had to, and so they could see the process, and they'd get all prepared and they'd lose their sleep, and they'd get there and like, how long is this going to take? And I'm like, 5 minutes. And they're like, really? Like, we don't have anything to talk about. And the cool thing is like, if people get combative with you, after you terminate them, which has only ever happened to me one time. But when people get combative with you or start making threats or start losing their crap, it's now time for them to go. And in fact, it's not a good legal thing for you to do as a leader or a boss or an owner to get combative with them or have a dialogue back and forth. And so the one time I had an individual that started insulting me, started insulting my relationship with the owner of the company, and that all these different things. And instead of taking that bait, I was like, you know what? It's time to call it a day, and it's time for you to leave. And we just walked him out the door. You can open yourself up to a world of hurt by continuing that dialogue, and it's so easy to get sucked in. You don't have to. It's a nice, easy time to go. So again, having those conversations with your employees, having people, like setting them up for success. And here's the thing. When I was from a leadership standpoint, going and having these conversations, everybody dreads the, hey, can I talk to you for a minute conversation? Another way to build great culture, and this is probably the way to build great culture, is catch your people doing great things. Don't just talk to them when you find them doing something that you want to nitpick or give them some structure or coaching. Find them doing the great things and let them know about those things too. And so when you're mixing that communication, they're not going to be like, oh God, what's he going to talk to me about?
I know. Sorry to interrupt.
No, you're
I know
good.
that feeling of, someone is a manager's slowly approaching you like they would approach a cornered animal, because they don't normally talk to you at all besides that. And it's like, they're like, don't be afraid. I was like, I know what you're doing.
Don't be afraid.
They have that vibe where you're trying to pick up a stray cat where they're coming towards you. Yeah, no, but like having that relationship is gonna, not only disarm, but also it's just gonna serve you better. So, yeah, like you're saying.
Absolutely. Well, people are constantly surprised, again, if you're talking to them for the first time and you're coming up to them and telling them it's a genuine surprise, and they're like, is there any way I can fix it? No, I've made my decision, like this is, again, I had to learn people don't want to come to their job and suck. Nobody wants to, you're there most of the time. Nobody wants to go and just be horrible at their job. And so either they're in the wrong position, they're in the wrong seat, they're working for the wrong company, they're doing the wrong role, or they just don't get it. They don't know what they're supposed to be doing, and that might not be their fault. And this is huge from a leadership standpoint. You got to look in the mirror and be like, what am I doing wrong? Do they know? Because I caught myself I caught myself a lot of times as a leader saying, well, I told them. I had that conversation. I remember early in my leadership career, people would ask me, how'd that conversation go? My boss would ask me, how'd that conversation go? Oh, it went great. It was phenomenal. They're going to get it fixed. I have 100% confidence that this is never going to be an issue again. And then I'd be shocked when it was an issue the very next day, or the very next hour, that, wow, what happened? I thought for sure that we communicated it so well. So that's just another huge piece of communication, is understanding that you might be a phenomenal orator. You may have said the right words that you understood, but it's very, very important to understand, what did they hear? Because again, it may not be your fault, but they have no idea what, they might be in a totally different perspective. I had my wife, at one point was called in to be fired, and she thought she was being called in to be promoted. And I've heard this from other people too, where it's like, you think you're being called in to be promoted, and they're like, we're letting you go. And you're like, what? So when you have no idea when you're in the room, you got to understand people might not understand what perspective you're coming from. So it was always important for me, again, to ask a question back. And I think it ties into even the interviews that we have here and everything. But, what do you think? Or what did you get out of that? Having them reiterate to me, like, what they're going to do, what's the game plan? How are you going to correct that? Okay. Now it's been talked about, and, again, the expectations are set. Now, when I go back, and the next conversation is really, really easy. If he went back to doing it again in the next hour, of like, hey, what happened? And oftentimes when I'd have conversations with people, like, it was just an easy thing. Again, when you have dialogues with people, and I think that Dan Campbell probably does this pretty successfully, but share a story. And I don't know if I shared this story in the podcast before, but I had a gentleman that worked for me. His name was Josh, and Josh was always somebody, and this is important for me still to this day, when I'm coaching people, when I'm looking for people, clients, and that I coach, it's very important that they are communicators, in the sense that when we talk, if I say something, they don't get super offended, and they don't make a lot of excuses, and they're doers, right? And so there's a way that I test that as I get to know people through my process. But Josh was this guy that made conversation very, very easy. For all intents and purposes, he wanted to do well. He was 20 years old, and he just found out he was having a baby with his on-again, off-again girlfriend. And so he was, that was when I met him, and he was coming on to my team. And so he needed to make money. He was super scared. He didn't know what he was going to do. And so he decided he was going to marry the young lady, and they were going to have their baby. But, he would come to me constantly because he wanted to do well in sales, because he knew he needed to support his family. But he was always, he had all the talent, but he never got the results. And a lot of it was, even though he wanted and desired and needed to be successful. He still had a lot of immaturity. And then how do you be successful? You don't just wake up even though you need it and you want it and decide, oh, now I know how to do it. Now I'm just a magically mature person that knows that I got to get on the phone and I got to make this many calls and I got to do this thing. No, it was really easy for Josh to slip in and talk with his fellow coworkers. In fact, he was the ringleader. He was a very social guy, and he'd get everybody talking about fantasy football or whatever thing was going on. And so this one day, Josh would always come to me with, especially as we were getting towards the end, he would come to me with all these different ways that he was going to find a different way to make money. And so he was very open with me because he knew he needed to support his family. And so he'd come to me with these different ideas, and there's a lot of them. He's going to go back to school and he's going to become a cop because that's really where all the money's at. And so I kind of laughed and then he was going to go in the military. And then one day he came to me and he was like, Jay, I know the way. I know how we're going to make, I'm going to make a lot of money. I'm going to go sell cars. Like, Josh, you can't sell phones, bro. Like, how are you going to sell cars, man? That's a cutthroat. Like, what if you just did things right? What if you just, what if you did, because we had a system that I was coaching and teaching people to be the difference. And so what if you just did these things that we're talking about? And, he would take some coaching and you'd get a little bit better. And, salespeople, when I first met him, I hired him. He worked at a kiosk. And if you ever know anybody that works at a mall kiosk, they come with like the holsters because they shoot the pistols and they always got a deal for you. And that was Josh, man. He was always fast talking and, in pistols. And I just saw a memory in my Facebook the other day. It was like 13 years ago, Verizon got the iPhone. And so we got the iPhone. It was a game changer. If nobody knows the cell phone industry back in the day, only AT&T had the iPhone. That may seem unfathomable at this point, but AT&T had the iPhone on lock for a certain amount of years and no other carrier could have the iPhone. And so 13 years ago, Verizon got the iPhone and that was a game changer. We're like, woo, we're all going to make, oh, there's my coffee again.
Need a clamp in there?
We'll probably need a towel.
We got you.
So
another one for the highlight reel.
That's one for the highlight reel. So while they're getting into the coffee, I'll continue the story. So iPhone comes in and everybody wanted the iPhone. Now the problem was that we didn't make very much money on the iPhone, one. And two, from a sales standpoint, it's really, everybody came in with the iPhone like it was a box of Kleenex or a can of Coke. It became the thing. Everybody a smartphone was really an iPhone. And so we had to do a little work to qualify. So long story short, we did our due diligence as salespeople to really understand if people wanted the iPhone before we sold it to them, because we made pennies on the dollar versus the other devices and just a few other things. So Josh is talking to this young lady and she's probably like 13, 14 years old. So teenage girl. And she comes in and wants the iPhone, and Josh is trying everything he can do to try to not get her to get the iPhone. And then he makes a statement and he says, let me ask you a question. Or he's like, why do you want the iPhone? And she was like, because all my friends have it. And he was like, let me ask you a question. He was like, if all your friends wanted the same pair of shoes, would you go out and get those? And if you know a 13 or 14-year-old girl, I've told this story in front of a crowd of people, and all those ladies in the crowd laughed, because yes, if you know anything about teenage girls, they do get the same outfits and the same shoes, and they dress like their friends, right? And so her obvious answer was yes. And
what were you expecting, dude? Sorry to interrupt you, Jason.
I literally...
that's not even a false equivalency. That's just a different version of the same question you're asking. It's like you're supposed to ask about jumping off of a bridge, not something equally superfluous. Sorry.
No, when you're asking a rhetorical question, you want to ask something that they're going to definitely say no.
And you want to not ask a yes/no question, maybe too.
So as soon as he asked it, I went, oh man! I was sitting across the room and I put my head to my face. But so Josh, he constantly did improve and he did get better. And I remember a few months later, I was listening to him and he was asking this older lady that came into the store some really good questions. The problem is in sales, you got to do two things in order to do sales really, really well. You got to listen, or you got to ask questions. You got to ask good questions. but then you got to listen. And those two things are equally as important, because you could ask phenomenal questions, but if you don't listen, you're going to look like a bigger jackass than if you didn't ask any questions whatsoever. And that's what happened to Josh.
So you weren't listening and you wasted my time.
You're not listening and you wasted my time. So he had this lady in front of him, and again, I'm sitting next to him, and he asked her some phenomenal questions, and he asked her this one question that was so good that it got her to say a whole paragraph of things. It got her to say basically everything that he needed to know, including his next three questions. And if he would have listened, it wouldn't have been embarrassing. But when he asked his next question, and it was so obvious that she just told him, answered everything about that question, she looked at him and said, "Were you not listening to a single word I said?" And again, it's like face palming for me. But those are great learning lessons. You've got to ask questions, and you got to listen. So Josh, we'd gotten to this point, and we'd gotten to a point where I was interviewing two potential leaders for this location, and I was going through an interview process with them. They both were from the location, and they were going head to head, and they both had strategic plans they had to bring to me and tell me why they would be the best leader. And so when I sat down with both of them individually, both of them in their game plans had fire Josh as one of their number one priorities. They said Josh is a waste of space. He distracts everybody. He doesn't get his job done. He's always consistently a lowest performer. And so a week later, we had a company meeting, and in my company, we every month we did this meeting, and we do a personal development, and I'd give out awards, and so hype everybody up, and so we got done with the meeting, and Josh was really, really hyped up, and between the meeting, and he got this new tattoo, and on the tattoo was on his arm, on his forearm, and it said something to the effect of, "Don't live a life, or don't tell your kids how to live a life of greatness, but instead show them the way." So be a leader, Dude, show them by example. And so I had spent the whole day in Josh's location and saw what he did all day. And so I looked at Josh, and I'm like, this guy's so proud of his tattoo, and he's telling me about it. And I'm like, "That's so awesome, Josh." And I'm like, "What'd you do today?" And he's like, "What do you mean?" I'm like, "Well, what'd you do in order to make your to show your son how to live a life of greatness?" And he just looked at me, and he got super emotional. And I'm like, "I see that tattoo means a lot to you. And that's awesome. That's an everyday driver, because now you have this thing on your arm you got to look at every single day. But I want it to mean something more to you. I want it to mean more to you than what you think it means to you. I want you to look at that and be like, when you don't want to make phone calls, when it's hard to make sales phone calls, that you look at that and you be like, if I don't do this, how am I going to live a life of greatness? What am I going to do when I got to go home to Grayson and I got to look him in the eye and tell him that your dad did nothing today to become better than he was yesterday? Your dad did nothing today to make sure that you're going to live a better life than what he did. How is that going to make you feel when you got to look at that tattoo as an everyday reminder?" In this, 6 foot, big burly guy, big beard, tattoos all over, just started bawling. And that was the day that he changed his life. And it was the day that I eventually I realized what my purpose was, and that my purpose was to uncage people's beasts and to really just help people go to that next level. But Josh was one of those guys that helped me open that up. But man, he started listening, and it was really cool. He made a commitment to me, and I said, "If you just commit for the next 3 months of doing everything I tell you to do, of working this system, of making your calls every single day, of doing the things you don't want to do, and when you don't want to do it, I want you to look at your tattoo and think, Viva la tat. And if I see you and you're not doing anything, I'm just going to say Viva la tat, because that's all we got to do, right? We to bring it back to home." And so we lived that life. He lived that life. And every single month, Josh made more and more money. It was one of the coolest things. I watched him double his income over the previous year, and then double it again, and then double it again. It was like, wow, he went from being the worst person in our whole entire company to being the guy that every single person in our company said, "I want to be like Josh." Josh ended up becoming the number one salesperson in our whole entire franchise across the whole entire country. So he wasn't just in our company, but across 500 locations in the state of in the country. He was the number one grossing salesperson. And when I left that job, he took over and took my role. So, and he's still in that role to this day, leading now. I think they have like 35 locations or something. So so it's really awesome. But I'll never forget. It was about 3 years later, after I hired Josh, and I get this phone call from him on a Saturday. And Josh is a very cocky guy. And usually when I got calls or texts from him on a Saturday, he's telling me about how he's going to crush it. He's going to have this big killer sales day. And he answers the phone, and it's kind of quiet. And he's like, "Jay," he's like, "As you know, I bought my first house yesterday." I'm like, "Yeah, man, I saw that. So awesome, man. So proud of you." He's like, "I'm sitting here and I'm sitting here thinking about how did I get here? I'm had Grace and had my baby, didn't know how I was going to make money, didn't know how I was going to support myself." He's like, "I've made it through this stuff." And I was like, "If I didn't have you kicking my ass, if I didn't have you believing in me and you holding me accountable and telling me the truth when I needed to hear it, I wouldn't be here." And it's not very, you guys all hear me. It's not very often that I'm speechless. And I tell the story to this day, and it makes me so emotional because I got off the phone that day and I just sat and I cried for like 45 minutes on my couch. And I was like, this is what I'm supposed to be doing for the rest of my life, is opening up and uncaging people. Like, man, nobody believed in Josh. They were going to fire that guy, right? And like, if I didn't stick with him, if I didn't kick his ass, if I didn't tell him what he needed to hear, he would still, I don't know where he'd be, and it's not go me. He had to go do the work. But to realize that you have that ability and that power, man, I talked the other day about playing small. There's no playing small when you can go and you can impact and change lives like that. And so what is it? What is it that you do? What is it that you're special at? What is it that you're like, people have told you your whole entire fucking life, like that's the thing right there. That's the thing that you should be doing. Go do it. Go find a way to do it, man. Like I have one of my best friends in my 20s, just got a chance to hang out with him a few weeks ago. And we went to a Pistons game. This guy lives in Mexico now. He was an artist. He always loved art. When I first met him, we met each other on the sales floor, and we sold cell phones together. And I remember meeting this guy, and he scared the shit out of me because he was just that guy that would just go out and get what he wanted. And but he would always talk about how he wanted to make money being an artist. And how do you make money being an artist, right? Like, how you become a salesperson, because I've hired so many of those people. Salespeople or art people. A lot of people in sales have art degrees, if you didn't know. So how do you make money doing that, right? And so, man, he had actually had a teacher in high school that he had a class that did screen printing, and this teacher had a stroke, and Brock went and visited him in the hospital. And it's like, again, man, when you have a purpose, when you have a purpose in life, when you have a goal and a dream that you're chasing, put it out there, because you have no idea, the world will open up and people will come and help you. And so Brock goes and visits this guy in the hospital, and the guy says, "I got all this equipment. I'm never going to use it again. I'm just going to give it to you." And I think actually he bought it for just really, really cheap. It was he didn't have any money. Like really, really cheap. He got screen printing. He got the all the equipment, and he started a clothing line. Started a clothing line in Flint, just hustled. At first, he would go to, I remember knocking on doors with them. We'd go out to sorority and fraternity houses, and he'd make shirts for their events, just hustling and grinding. He didn't know exactly what to do with this equipment. Back when the Pistons won the championship in 2004, I had this idea. We were talking. It's like, man, bad boy shirts. Like, that'd be really cool to do some bad boy shirts. So we got this idea, and we just went out and hustled. We designed a bad boy shirt. We did Bad Boys 2. We made all the shirts in our friend Greg Wilson's basement, with Brock's equipment. And then we called all the bars in Flint. We went out to all the bars in Flint. Bubba's being one that worked with us. We've landed 5 bars that would allowed us to bring our shirts and drop them off in Flint. The night the Pistons won the championship, it was the last game of the series, and the shirt sold for $20 a piece, and we gave $5 to the waitress or bartender, whoever sold the shirt for whatever establishment we went to, and we ended up selling like 1,000 shirts that night between all these bars. And so we just went out, hung out, watched the Pistons game. We went to every bar where we were selling shirts, hyped it up, had a phenomenal night, made a bunch of money, had a bunch of shirts left over. My friend Brock and our other friend Jeremy went out and they went to the Pistons championship parade and they got all their shirts confiscated. I went to GM because my dad worked at GM, and so I went to GM and I stood outside. I just waited for people to get off on their break, and I sold the rest of my shirts cash, like cash money, because people coming out of GM just have cash. And when they saw a Bad Boy shirt, they were like, take it, And so, man, you just talk about hustling and grinding. So we hustled and grinded and made cash out of something that was just a fun thing, right? Man, Brock, he came up with a clothing line called Vivid Braille. He moved to Chicago, opened up a boutique. Guy made clothing for Kevin Durant and a bunch of people. Taught himself how all the stuff, and now he's a high-end consultant. Sold his business. He's a high-end consultant with helping companies build software, and has a house in Mexico. Travels to Brazil and internationally, and just made something that was his talent and took it. Became a dream, right? Became a business, and fell on his face a whole lot. That's entrepreneurs listening to this. If you're not ready to fall on your face, if you're not ready to fail, don't get in this game. I'm going to tell you right now, if you're thinking that everything's going to be a victory, and I'm telling all these great stories, there's some good, amazing stuff that happens, but you're going to fall on your face, and you're meant to fall on your face. If you don't fall on your face, you're not going to have those scars. You're not going to have that grit, man. We talk about the Detroit Lions. How much did they have to get their ass beat? How much do they have to get their teeth kicked in, right? Like that was the whole speech. Like, you might knock us down, but we're going to take a kneecap on the way up. There's going to be, we're ready for the adversity. Bring it. We're built for this shit, right? Bring it. And so that's the attitude that you got to have in life. And in just having that, like, you will get there, right? It's just that pure intensity. So it's so cool. Again, just seeing somebody like Brock go out there and seeing someone, you can take your talents and your ability and go and make it something. And so for me, again, this podcast, and everywhere I go, people are coming up to me like, "Oh, this is your gift," right? And again, I'm hard at taking a compliment when you're told over and over and over again by people about certain things. You got to listen. The universe, people are telling you something. For me, starting my business, I sat on the sideline for so long, worried that who would want to listen to me? Who would want to hear me speak, right? And then one day I'm out and about in a networking meeting, and a gentleman taps me on the shoulder because we're in a crowded networking event, and he can hear my voice from all the way across the room. And so he taps me on the shoulder, and I'm used to my whole entire life people telling me that I need to be quiet. And this guy tells me, your voice is a gift from God, and you need to share it with as many people as possible. That's something that still to this day drives me. When it comes down to having fear, when it comes down to, do people want to hear me? I think about all those people, because, man, my leadership team and people that were on my sales team had told me for years that I should have been the guys on the stage, because I took my people to, seminars. It's all about development. Leaders, if you have people, develop them, get them, whether you get them coaching, you're coaching and developing them, you're exposing them and getting them outside of that box that is the workspace. The most development I ever done, I had a mentor that took us outside of the box. And so when there are conventions and conferences, he took his top leaders, and and it's something that we would have contests in. Guys, I'm a face eater, right? And so when it came down to is my boss going to take me to Vegas, or going to take one of the other leaders to Vegas? Better goddamn well bet that I'm going to Vegas, right? And so I'm going to do the things. I'm going to win the competition. I'm going to do the things in order to make sure that I'm getting out there. And when I got those opportunities, and I'm going out to events, and I'm getting around other entrepreneurs, and I'm starting to see what we're doing on a landscape is actually way bigger than I thought it was. I thought I'm just doing this job in the store and these four walls every day. And I got to see the actual impact we're making on an industry, and the respect that we have. And then also personal development took my career to another level. And so I wanted to make sure that when I was in a leadership position, that I was mentoring and developing people. And what's so cool about that is to not only see the results, because, hey, again, talking about the Lions, like, have you ever been part of a rebuild? I have. When you're part of a rebuild and you come in as the crazy person, when you come in as Dan Campbell saying all that crazy shit, like we're going to bite some kneecaps and we're going to be at the mountaintop and one day we're going to be the best company, people look at you like that's a load of shit. Like, hey, I came into a company, and this is like literally, I came into this company and the owner of the company, Debbie Allen, looked at me and we had a phenomenal interview, just a phenomenal lady. She looked at me and said, I need you. Their company was millions of dollars in debt, and they had three options. They were either going to close their business and file bankruptcy. They had an option of whether they could sell pieces and parts of their business to another dealer or agent, and they could get as much as they could, or they could throw up a Hail Mary and try to make this thing work. And she was like, I want to make this thing work. I've got people, I've got employees, I've got her former partner had Parkinson's disease, and she had this fear that he was, not going to be able to sustain life and take care of himself because they had bankruptcy and all these things. And so she wanted to make a run at it, and she looked at me and she was like, I need you, but I have no idea how I'm going to pay you. And so we made it work. And I came in and I was so freaking excited to build something because I came from the Patriots. I came from a team that was at the top, and I had a big part of growing that. So I didn't just get placed in. I had a big part of growing a company that was at the top. And so when I came in, I was like, this is going to work here too. It's really funny when you don't have the right culture and the right people. I would go home at night and I tell Gracie, I swear people are letting air out of my tires, and someone's got a voodoo doll and they're poking needles in it, and people are sabotaging me. The general manager of the company was doing things to make sure that I was losing. Yeah. It felt like a political landscape, because that's face it, everybody. I don't talk politics because we only win if somebody else loses. And in the company, in entrepreneurship, in business life, in life in general, we only win when others win, right? And so if you're working in a company and other people or other departments are sabotaging you, that company is probably not going very, very, very many places. And so I had to fire every single person. Maybe not even fire, because a lot of them chose to leave. That's the really cool thing when you build a culture is, and leaders, owners, if you're building a culture right now, it may seem like it's so hard and it's never going to happen. You got to be consistent. You got to know where you're going. And you got to be consistent. And you can't let in to anybody that wants to test you, no matter if they're the best salesperson or not. And so I had a person in the company that was the highest performer there, and she was the ringleader of the company. Everybody respected her. And she was also a lot of drama, and she led people to, she incited people to go the opposite way. And so, hey, that's fine. Because you know what? Just like the Lions went out and they rebuilt their team, and they got, Jared Goff and Jahmyr Gibbs and Aiden Hutchinson and the offensive line, and you look at Brian Branches and all the. You know what? I went out and I started doing that too. I went out and I got a young man named Michael Curtis that was the most coachable green person I'd ever met. So talented, so charismatic, and I let him just shadow me and just coached him, mentored him, developed him. There's another young man that I developed, because just like Brad Holmes went out and got his guys from the Rams and brought them to the Lions, I went out and I got my guy, who was a guy that I had coached and mentored and developed and turned into a killer salesperson. And I brought him into my organization and made him a leader of one of my locations, and he became the example. He lit it on fire from day one. And so I had these two guys. They were starting to turn the company around because they believed in me. They believed what I was talking about, and they were getting the results. Matt had Matt Bergen had believed in me 5,000%. We still have that relationship to this day. So he came in and he did his thing, and then the other young man saw what he was doing and didn't want to surround himself with the other people that weren't making money. They were complaining about their paychecks on Friday, and they were still complaining about their friends that sucked, that got fired. And so look at all the negative. And when you're in a situation, or I love this in sales, right? Because my mentor used to say, like, look at your check. And if you're the person that loves your job, you have a lot of fun, but then on Fridays you complain about your money, you're probably a low performer. And at the same time, if you're the person that's like, whew, this was a busy week, this is a crazy week, you're running all over the place, you're working your ass off, you're probably not the one that's complaining on Fridays about, where your money is at. And so your work is very comparable to what you get from the pay. So again, these two people noticed, and then I just kept adding more pieces, just like the lions did, just adding more pieces. And the next thing you know, we had a company full of just lions that were just ready to eat faces. And so this is one of my favorite cool stories. And I had to kind of a picture today that today was going to be story time, because I haven't told some of these stories on the Coffee and Grit podcast. But this is still to this day, and this is a nice trick for anybody out there that needs to drum up instant confidence. Again, whether you're having a confrontational conversation, you have to terminate somebody, you have to tell somebody that they don't look good or whatever it is, to drum up you have to speak in public, drum up instant confidence. Remember a time that was really good. You had extreme confidence, and go back to that time. And so for me, there's several of them now, but for me, early in my career, I had taken over this company that was, again, millions of dollars in debt, and in broken, in coming in with people that didn't want to move and change. And I had to completely regrow and redevelop the whole entire company and create new structure and processes. And we had to create a sales culture. And so we did that, and we created that, and we're in the first year, really starting to see some progress. We started to grow and started to be able to pay back the banks and make some real good progress. But we went out to a convention, and there was every quarter, Verizon would throw these events together, and they'd hand out awards to the top performers, and it'd be a big kickoff of what's going to happen this quarter, and really gear us up. And we were out in Indianapolis, and every year they gave these every quarter they gave these really awesome awards. They were like gold records, that not like they were actual gold records, and it was called Breaking Records was the contest. And so they gave out for every territory in the region, they gave out the top performer for that region. And my former mentor, Dean, who I've talked about quite a bit in this episode and the other episodes, he won every single award, including my former location, which, my numbers that I put in was the reason why he won that location. And I came from a company, obviously we were broke and kind of rebuilding, and so I had to drive myself out to Indianapolis. Well, I came from the Patriots; they had all the money, right? And so this organization had flown Dean and the other people that they had brought out to the company out. So Dean's like, hey dude, I can't take these awards back on the plane, and I know you're driving, so can you take those back? And my wife worked for him at the time, and so if you can give those to Gracie, and she can just drop them off to me. And the way he said it was a nice, Dean had a really good way of just being cocky and putting salt in the wounds, right? And if you've ever met one of those people, you got him. So I'm not the guy to put the salt in the wounds.
You're the guy to put those records on the side of the freeway.
So no. But you get a really high power level of visualization when you have those awards in your hand. And so the first thing I did is I took those awards to my company meeting, because we had a company meeting. I called the whole company together. We did a company meeting, and I pulled out those awards, and I showed every single person in our company what we were playing for. And I let them touch it, let them feel like what it would be like if they were the ones that were up there that they had won that award. And we knew what we had to do. We knew the numbers and the goals we had to do to achieve it. And we set the company on fire that day. People were bought in. Again, leaders often, they want to lead people by telling them what they want. Did I want to win those awards? With every fucking thing in my body, I wanted to win those awards. I wanted more than anything to win every single one of those awards, and for Dean to watch me accept every single one of those awards and sit and think, how did Jason Tracey beat me? How did he beat me? And so I wanted that more than anything. But if I came to my company and was like, I want to be the greatest ever, and then when you guys do this for me, I'm going to look pretty amazing, and it's going to be pretty awesome. No. What does it mean when you do this? When you're a salesperson for a company that has been the worst company in the whole entire in the industry in the state of Michigan, and you can make this now a top company, you're now winning the awards. What does that do for you? What does that do for your career? I know what it did for me. I'm here right now. I was in a position to where I was able to take over a company and lead it. I was in the Dan Campbell seat, right? Dan Campbell did enough to get that job with the Detroit Lions and be able to come in and take over. And so I did enough to get in that seat. And so, what does that mean for you when you're able to knock those out? And hey, my leaders, if we're in position to win this award, every single one of you is coming with me because I want you to experience it. I want you to taste winning this award. It's not just mine, So it was all about the why, but it wasn't about my why. Yeah, I got something out of it too, and it was pretty fucking awesome. And so fast forward, year later, we'd busted our ass. We'd really turned around our company. We were paying off debt. I'd built a team of just difference makers, of grinders, they were working, taking care of people. And so we think we have a chance, but you never know. And so we think we have a chance for at least one. And we go out there and we're sitting, and they handed out 4 awards for the territories, and we won 3 out of the 4. The only one we didn't win was my former location out in Lansing that Dean still won. So I took 3 out of 4. And as I was sitting there, No Sleep Till Brooklyn by the Beastie Boys is blaring on the radio. Yeah. I was blaring on the speakers. It's this huge event. I've got 1,000 of my peers in front of me as like a seminar. I've got my whole leadership team with me, the owner of our company. I've got my leadership team with me. And we've got these, every one of us is holding a record. It was, and as I'm sitting there, I look, and in the front row is Dean sitting there with his hands like this. And I knew in his head, he was like, how the fuck did Jason Tracey beat me? And what's super awesome is, again, my wife worked for that company, and I knew that an emergency meeting was called as soon as Dean got back. And they said, we're never going to let him beat us again. But we did. We did, because we built something like the Lions built. We built it. We made it about the people. It wasn't just about me, because every single one of those people got to go. It's so cool. It is so cool right now, looking back at the people that were part of that company and seeing the things that they're doing now. And again, it's not about, I looked at it then about being the best cellular company, but what I was doing and what we were doing as an organization is just empowering people to go out and kick ass, and that's, again, what it's all about. The Joshes and the Matts and, man, Flip Lloyds and, just all these people that are out there just crushing it. Hannah, man, Kelly, there's all these people just out there like crushing it because they were part of that, part of that culture, part of that organization. And so when you're looking at it, you're doing more for people by bringing them in and going back at it, man. Like Grant, like the ideas And hey, I've given Dean so much credit for changing me who I was, but sometimes you can learn from people, the good, the bad, and the bad. And I'll never forget, I grew a location in his company, and it became the highest grossing location in Michigan, Indiana, Kentucky. It was just a banger of a store. It was the worst store in our company when I took it over. Then became the best store, not only in our company, but in the whole entire region. And all my ideas that I would tell Dean, I'd catch him and I'd hear him telling other people they were his ideas. I would hear different high executives when I got to go to those conventions and conferences. I heard high executives come up to him and congratulate him for that really cool idea that he had that really moved that needle. And I remember that was me that went to him and had that idea. And so, man, that really stung that he didn't give me any kind of like credit on that. So when I went to when I had my own position in leadership, it was like, that would never happen, because one, I know how I felt. I never wanted to give him another idea again. I didn't want to, for the sake of like just not getting the credit for it. All of a sudden Dean looked like a genius, and I was me, again, man, that does something to you. And so when people bring me ideas, I want to give them 5, that's their credit. Josh Bednarski, I was talking about a little bit ago. He had this really awesome. It became a contest that we would do every single year. And lo and behold, we talk about fantasy football. It revolved around fantasy football. And so really cool. Josh obviously loved football. He loved fantasy football. And he took something that he loved and he turned it into something that became his passion, making money and working. So he took this thing that, he became really good at in working. And he was like, hey, what if instead of fantasy football, we did like fantasy sales rep? And the managers got together and drafted sales reps across the company, and everybody had a team, and you get certain points for different things that you sell. And then the winning team gets to go to a Lions game. Oh my God, that's phenomenal, Josh. That's an amazing idea. And so it became a staple of our whole entire culture. 2 times a year, we'd do a fantasy draft. So we did it. It started off with once, but because we got such a bang out of it, we'd have to do it twice. And so we had 2 different contests, and we'd switch it up and switch teams up. And it became, again, those were always our 2 best months. It was like, how can we do this contest every single month? Because it was our 2 best months. And what it came out of it was beautiful, because before you'd have locations competing against each other. And what happened is now you have a manager that has a salesperson over in this location and over in this location. They're spread out across the company, and you have people calling each other. You have the best salesperson in the company calling the worst salesperson in the company because he's on his team, and giving him advice and telling him, just listening to him and helping him out. And so it created this really cool thing. And you saw low performers would pick up their numbers. High performers would just crush it. The best, you talk about Super Bowl, end of the month, at the end of this contest, my top sales guys, Josh and Matt and Hannah, and they would be in their location calling people until midnight, calling customers until midnight. Now that's not acceptable. Like, I'm not telling you to go call your customer at 11 o'clock at night and that'll be a good idea. It's not. But this is what we built. And this is in anybody, you can build this too. It's the whole crux to being the difference. These people built such great relationships with their people. They took care of them and served them so well that when Matt called up a customer at 11:30 at night and was like, hey, I'm so sorry I'm calling you at 11:30 at night, but I'm in this contest and I need one more to win, and I know you always have my back. What can you do? And they would buy it. I would like
the ringer.
And so, and it was, again, with Matt's thing in the beginning, and he was the Amon-Ra St. Brown. He was the guy, he was the closer. He's catching it at the end of the game. He's not going to drop that ball. He's going to go out there and he's going to close it. You could bet money that Matt Bergen was going to win the contest. He was a face eater. He was a closer. He had the ice water in his veins. He was going to do whatever it was possible to make sure that he won the contest. But what does that create? It creates more. Josh, man, when Josh was in his was I'm not good enough, even as he started performing and putting up numbers, when it was his idea. Fantasy sales rep is his idea, but he always wanted to be on Matt's team because he was like, I could only win if I'm on Matt's team. And I told Josh, I'm like, Josh, I want someday for you to be able to realize that people should want to be on your team. People should want to be saying, like, I want to be on Josh's team. And what's so cool is he became the master of that contest. Everybody would fight and claw and scratch at who getting Josh on their team. He was the number 1 pick every single time until he became a leader himself, and then he was automatically on his team. And people were like, that sucks. We're not going to beat Josh. Isn't it funny how people limit themselves like that? Josh never thought he could beat Matt. And then the sales numbers that he eventually put Matt's sales numbers to shame, like broke all of his records, shattered, right? We look at like Roger Bannister and running the mile, and how the people could never run a mile under 5 minutes, right? And how crazy that is. And then all of a sudden somebody comes along and does it. And the next week, like 20 people break the record. Now everybody runs the mile under 5 minutes. Maybe not everybody, I don't know. But a lot of people run the mile under 5 minutes. So you just look. And I guess, to bring this home, and everything we've been talking about is everything is possible. The only thing that's not possible is the things that you put the limit and the cap onto. If you tell yourself it's impossible, you're right. No matter everybody I've ever worked with, no matter male or female, black or white, no matter poor or rich, no matter what their circumstances is, they can't outthink their belief system. Whether you think you can or you think you can't, either way, you're right. And so take that, chew on that over this next week, and think, what are you going to do? what are you going to do? Like Darren said, place your order and then go do it. Because, man, I didn't think back in October that I'd have a coffee. And then it became a reality because once it became something that, Grant saying the name and all of a sudden it started to become a little bit real. And then realizing, oh my God, I have the resources and the infrastructure. I have a wife that can do the design work and create an awesome label. I had just transferred over and started this on the CRM system that became that I was, been 2 months in this, switching all my stuff over, and then realizing, oh my God, this CRM has a whole entire infrastructure for me to build out a website, to build out a web store, to have my products on there, to be able to manage my community, post, like all these different things that, oh my God, it's just all coming together. And so once you believe it's possible, go out and do it. Hey, everybody. I hope you enjoyed my solo jam session sitting on the end. And man, Grant, thank you for coming in.
Hey,
this
happy
has
to
been
be
awesome.
part of it, man. Can I tell a one story?
Absolutely.
I don't want to usurp your ending here,
No,
but
go ahead.
I want to tell the dumb Google review story just because it relates slightly. So here at Speakeasy, here, I'm going to see if I can give myself a camera. Oh, there we go.
Ah, awesome.
Perfect.
I love it.
Not at all centered in the frame. Look at that.
I love it. People get to see you. They always hear your voice. So I'm loving that you're in.
Yeah, this is great. Anyway, so we have this thing at Speakeasy. We like to get reviews from people because we like to hear feedback. We like to know how we're doing. We like to know how the experience is. And in order to generate more reviews, there was a competition between the studio, because there's studio part of it, and then Wayne Media, who does a lot of the creative video services web, all the great stuff that they do up front. Man, that context lit things up. I was chasing people down. I was pushing cards in front of people like Jason tells you you're not supposed to do. Like, just even something small or that seems small like that, it really does A, help, and B, motivate you. So it's like, if you ever just don't want, like, just make it a contest. Honestly, like, it could be fun. Like, yeah, it might be difficult, it might be uncomfortable, but it could also be fun.
Make it fun, but it kind of takes that pressure away. Like, people are afraid to be salesy or selling, but when you can say, oh, you know what, we're having a competition, you can use it as a way to make it more comfortable. Mm-hmm. And it's so funny that you say that because I still tell every single person that comes out of here, oh, Grant won't tell you this, but they're having a competition. So if because I want them to
appreciate you, homie.
I want them to tie in and Grant will be like, well, we're not having a contest. And no, you're still having it, because if people want to do good things for you.
We're not having it. We won it.
You won it.
We decidedly won that, man.
Yes.
Yeah, we won. It was like 72 to like 6, or I don't know what they had.
Because people do want to help out, and if you can give them an easy way that they can support you, and I'm finding out, with the coffee, giving somebody an easy way to support you. There's so many people that have bought the coffee that are never gonna do coaching and consulting with me, and that's I think they've always wanted to support me in some way, and so all of a sudden now I have an easy way for them to support me. People didn't know what the coffee tasted like, smelled like. They didn't even ask me what it cost. And that's the best way to sell things in the world, is when they're like, I'll just take one. They don't even ask you what the price is, right? And so when you can build that social equity up, and then you can ask people, and you can put it out there and you can make it easy for them. It's a no-brainer and a driver, so super awesome. But
yeah, buddy.
I love that contest aspect, because again, it makes it so much easier.
Yeah, and another fun thing we do. I'm just gonna give away all of our secrets now. I hope you don't mind. But we do. All right, somebody moved my monitor in between. I just cut to myself. I don't know who that was, but no. What we also do is you and me will turn like briefing people on how to be in the studio into a game, where we joke like, oh, it's our flight attendant procedure. Grant's gonna stand over Jason's shoulder. Jason's gonna mime and act out the motions for everything. And it's actually like it usually gets a laugh out of people. Like it's much more fun than just dryly explaining something. So there's fun ways to do things.
You look at monotonous things, like you probably do that so many times.
I don't want to talk about it.
So we can have fun with it and make it fun. And then the other thing is oftentimes guests are nervous and they're like, they don't know what to expect. And so when we can have some fun back and forth with them and get them talking, it literally does. It gets the laugh out of them and makes them more comfortable.
Absolutely.
It's just, there's so much just having fun, and again, going back and referencing the Lions, I feel like those guys are having a whole lot of fun. I feel like they're having a whole lot of fun, that they're playing for each other. And, you can see it when things are more stressed and tight and you just got to achieve something, if you're just out there looking for something, whether it's a job, it's money, it's a relationship, how hard is it to find? Doesn't it seem like it's like impossible? Like everything's running away from you. But then when you just go and you be, and I'm saying live life intentionally. You want to know what you want out of life. If you don't know that, you're not listening. Like you want to know what you want out of life, but when you can go be and have fun and have conversations and not think about every person as a dollar sign, like again, be open, listen to people's ideas and their talents, because you just never, ever know. If you don't listen, there's so many things passing you by. It's so funny. The other day, I have this superstition, 11:11, when it's 11:11, make a wish. Gracie always used to say that. And so recently I've been like, consistent with, I want 4 new coaching clients. And so just saying it, asking the world for a specific, I've said something more specific than that when asking. And then all of a sudden, like I get these messages, and this one message came in yesterday that I was just like, I didn't know, I wasn't going to take it seriously. And then I was like, wait a minute. I just asked the universe for 4 new coaching clients. And then this person came at me and asked me this question about my coaching. And so I should probably take this seriously. How many times do we like ask for something and then we're like, oh, but I don't want that one, or just totally oblivious. If Dylan said the coffee and I'm like, oh, that's a great idea, but I didn't really listen to what he said. Like I was instantly like, oh shit, that's a really good idea. I wish I would have thought of that.
Yeah, man, future Jason better do something with this. You didn't say that. It was like, oh no, hey, what can I do with this now? So.
Yeah. Well, and again, you were a big help, because you coming in with the name, it made it real in my head. It was something that, as soon as I went out there and said it, it was very sellable. I said it in a post, Lion's Breath, and instantly people were bought in. So don't short yourself on that credit. That was a huge driver.
Thank you.
If it would have been something really lame, I would have never rolled out with it.
I would have cut it from the episode if it sucked. So.
Man. So I hope you all enjoyed this episode, and again, just know what you want, go out and do it, have a bunch of fun, and make sure you're communicating along the way, and catch people doing good things. Whether they're your employees, they're your family members, they're just people. Maybe they're your barista making your coffee. Catch them doing good things and let them know. Have a killer week, everybody.